All right, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. I have what I guess you would call this a treat. I don't know. I think it's a treat. I think it's a blessing. I'm speaking with Jake Lang. Jake Lang happens to be the longest, he was held the longest out of all of the J6 hostages. He was held the longest in the gulags, 4 years. Did you say 6 days, Jake?
Yeah, 4 years and 6 days in the Joe Biden political prisons without a trial, Carl.
I mean, that honestly, that's absolutely astonishing to me. I want to get to that, and I got to be frank with you, Jake. That makes me hot right off the bat. So I want to cool down a little bit. I could already feel my temperature flaring. Let's go back to January 6th, 2021. Just give us a brief synopsis of what happened on that particular day with you, and then talk to us about the follow up. Why is it that they arrested you? Why were you the longest serving J6 hostage? Were you in the DC Gulag? Where were you?
I did over 2 years in the DC Gulag, but they moved me 17 times, Carl. It was an absolute atrocity. Yes, they put me through what's called diesel therapy. It's a torture technique that the federal government does on political prisoners, I mean, but also on some other prisoners. When they're trying to get you to capitulate to a plea deal, what they do is they consistently move you around the country to keep you unmoored and disillusioned, and your family doesn't know where you're at. Your attorney has a hard time finding you. You lose access to all of your legal discovery and documents. And so it's basically a cat and mouse game that you're trying to just survive as a human being while the government is building this massive caseload on you. You're barely able to even, get one meal that's not a bologna sandwich in.
Okay, this is. I'm hearing this for the first time. This is absolutely that is just crazy. So for those of you guys there's a lot of people out there, even on the right, that'll say, "Man, Trump should have considered every single crime, every single case one by one." And I'm like, nah. No, he shouldn't have. He should have pardoned every single person just like he did, simply because due process was completely denied. I'm frankly at that point, I don't care what happens. Either we're a nation of laws or we're a nation of men. That's the way our Constitution works. Like it or not, we either are or a nation again, the rule of law, or we're ruled by men. It's as simple as that. So when I hear of all this, where these guys like Jake Lang doesn't get his due process, are you kidding me? I think you have to go through the system or have gone through the system in some way, shape, or form to understand the injustice that has been done to people like Jake Lang. Now, Jake, all right, let's go back to January 6th. Why did Joe Biden's regime want to arrest you? What did they say you did wrong?
Well, just to make a comment on what you said before, Donald Trump went through the system. You know, he was in a two-tiered weaponized persecution as well in the New York courtroom, not having a single chance at justice, them just alleging false charges on him, and the jury there completely biased. He was guilty before he even ever walked in the courtroom. He didn't have a chance to even say his side of the story. It was like a Soviet show trial. And that's what the Jan Sixers went through as well. And, so my story behind January 6th, I was 25 years old on January 6th, 2021. I had 4 birthdays in the Gulag. I'm about to turn 30. I almost had 5 birthdays in the Gulag here in April, that they stole, some of the best years of my life from me. But on January 6th, it was a beautiful day of American unity, of American protest, one of our sacred rights to redress a grievance with our government. It was a moment in history where we, looked to the left and looked to the right of each other, and we said either we're just going to back down and surrender to this communist coup d'etat that was happening inside the Capitol with Joe Biden's installment, where they stole an election and they took a puppet regime leader who's been bought and paid for by China, Beijing Joe, Beijing Biden. And so we went and we just said, let's redress this grievance. Let's make sure our legislature inside the Capitol building knows that we need to send these votes back to be recounted. We had many brave Republicans that were about to stand up and to do exactly just that. But that's when the Fedsurrection took over. That's when they
Jake,
decided.
hold on. This is a very important point. So I want to just interject real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt you. So you wanted to make sure that the legislators would send the votes back to their states for certification. because you believe the election was stolen, as do I. All right, so or rigged at the very least, right? Or so you wanted just to make this emphatically clear. This is an important point that I don't think a lot of people understand, because I hear even conservatives, well, they wanted to go in and maim, murder, they wanted to do all of this stuff to Pence, and I'm like, no, 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 no. They wanted to make sure the votes went back to the states so that they were recertified, so we could make sure that there was no cheating going on. Is that right or wrong?
Of course, yeah, we're proponents. The January Sixers are constitutionalists, we're conservatives. We are, most of the guys there that I've ended up locked up with are former Marines, U.S. Special Operators, Army Rangers. These guys believe in the system. They love the American way of life and the actual ideal of American governance, not sometimes the corruption that occurs, but we were there to support the constitutional republic and not to cause some insurrection where we installed our own system of government or our own leader or something. I mean, we were there to make sure that the system, the way the founding fathers had designed it, was properly instituted and implemented, because there were people, the deep state, that was trying to subvert our system of government. And we were like kind of like the last Alamo stand to say, hey, if we must, as we the people stand here and redress and protest and call upon, our leaders inside to be bold enough to send this vote back, then we will. And so that's why we were there, not with hate in our heart, not with violent intentions. The thing about January 6th is we all showed up at the Capitol not having any understanding that the Capitol Police and Nancy Pelosi had a different plan for us in store than we could have possibly imagined. We were peacefully protesting when the unspeakable happened. Our own government, the Capitol Police and the Metropolitan Police Departments, started to unleash a barrage, an onslaught of rubber bullets, tear gas, concussion grenades, metal batons. They literally started to maim and murder and kill people. One of those women died in my arms, Carl. Her name was Roseanne Boylan. That was a different
That
woman, a
okay?
separate
I
woman.
know who you are. Then I know who you are. You were okay. So you were standing right next to her, basically trying to help her out.
Yes, so there was two women that died that day. One of them was shot in the throat. Everyone
Right.
knows about Ashley Babbitt, and God rest
Correct.
her soul. She's an American hero. But at the West Terrace Tunnel, which is that famous tunnel where the president walks
Yes.
out for the inauguration, we got entrapped inside there. And basically, the police sealed it off and cordoned us off and started unleashing. Like I said, even the chemical attack was worse so because it was an enclosed space. And so people like Roseanne and myself, we couldn't breathe when they started hitting us with CS gas and these different chemical tear gases and whatnot. She collapsed and she was trampled and she was beaten while she was on the ground by Officer Lila Morris. And I witnessed this. I responded to this. I tried to save her life from this. And when her life was impossible to save, when she basically Father God had called her home, she was no longer with us, from directly resulting from the Capitol Police's actions. I was able to then, kind of triage my efforts and move over to a young black man named Philip Anderson who was caught in the same crush as she was, and he was unconscious. And the video. This is kind of like why one of the reasons why I've become a well-known January Sixer is because there's actually video of me going into that dog pile, pulling Philip Anderson out and dragging him away to the volunteer medics that saved his life. And it was my calling from God. People ask me, would you do anything different if January 6th, dot, 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 on January 6th? I say no way, because this man and another man, Tommy Tatum, both have done court sworn affidavits claiming that, if I wasn't there, they would have died and that I saved their life. And, God put me in the right place at the right time and just gave me a heart to say, instead of running the other way, we're going to make sure that these Capitol Police officers don't take any more lives. Because after we lost Roseanne Boylan, people may know me and know of me and seen the videos of me online. And, after they killed Roseanne and I was able to say, Philip, I wasn't playing any games after that. I said, no more men or women, elderly men especially. There was a lot of elderly men, former military and veterans there that were defenseless. They had no weapons, and there was a very weapon-filled attack on us with, I mean, these metal batons. I
Sure.
got cracked in the skull. They cracked my skull open. I was bleeding everywhere.
We,
And so,
Jay,
I
Hold
took a
on.
stance.
Hold on for just a sec. We only have a minute left in this particular block. We're going to be holding Jake Lang over. He was the longest held J6 hostage by the Biden regime, and we're talking to him. He's giving his story. Jake, I want to make clear here when you say you didn't want any more. You're not saying you were going to attack cops or do that. What are
Well,
you
no,
saying
I
to clarify?
No, what I'm saying is they were advancing upon us, and me and a group of patriots, we formed like a line, a barrier between the unarmed crowd and the defenseless crowd and the
Got you.
police. So saying, this is where you guys will no longer come to kill any more of us. And so you'll see
Wow.
me, in videos and stuff. They're pretty serious videos because people were dying. And so we needed to take defensive action immediately to prevent any more loss of human
I
life.
do.
And that's the police's job to de-escalate the situation. But for some reason, they were hell bent on injuring and murdering unarmed Americans that day. It was grotesque. It was like a
Okay.
police riot. They were out of control.
We'll be back. More with Jake Long when we return. Hey, Carl Jackson here for My Pillow. For years, customers have been asking if My Pillow sells cross necklaces like the one Mike Lindell proudly wears every day. Well, they are excited to announce that Mike has partnered with a jeweler right here in the USA to create beautiful sterling silver My Crosses. So right now you can save 30% today using promo code Carl, CARL, at mypillow.com. Click on the radio podcast square or give them a call at 800-858-0263 and be sure to use the promo code Carl. You can choose from the women's or men's style. The My Cross for women has a more delicate look and is reversible with mother of pearl styled translucent white enamel on one side and onyx styled black enamel on the other. The My Cross for men has a slightly larger cross with onyx styled black enamel and a slightly longer, thicker chain. So this amazing offer isn't going to last long. Order now. Go to mypillow.com. Click on the radio podcast square or call 800-858-0263. Use promo code Carl. And don't forget, there are so many deals available at mypillow.com. Use promo code Carl. All right, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast, The Carl Jackson Show, wherever you go to get your podcast, YouTube, Rumble, so on, etc. Also, all things social media at Carl Jackson Show or at The Carl Jackson Show, X, Instagram, and Facebook. And I look forward to those of you that are going to be watching this interview over the weekend on the Salem News Channel. Hello. We are interviewing Jake Lang. Jake Lang is the longest serving J6 hostage. There's plenty of video now. Frankly, Jake, I've interviewed other J6ers, but I remember you vividly now because I watched so many of those J6 videos. And I used to have, when I would sit in for Dennis Prager and which I'm sitting in for Dennis Prager now, but Dennis Prager, Larry Elder, so on, et cetera, I would have Julie Kelly on early on when she first started gaining traction. She's done such amazing work when it came to just keeping us informed with all of the things that were happening with the J6 hostages. And that's the way that I really believe it went down. So people can see video of you, find video of you. Frankly, we should have had some rolling in the background because I know exactly who you are now. And so you decided, you and a group of people, J6ers, if you will, protesters, decided that, listen, man, these cops were getting out of control. We're going to make sure that they don't go any further than this. We're gonna defend life. The federal government, Biden's regime, basically called you an insurrectionist. Let's fast forward. We only have about 9 minutes in this block, so let's fast forward. After all of this ordeal is over, you make that stand. You protect life. You try to save Roseanne Boylan. When do the feds show up at your place, or what happened? How did this arrest occur?
Well, since the very night of January 6th, I became very outspoken on what happened on the Capitol grounds. It was kind of like a Boston Massacre moment for our country. As far as, we lost 4 American lives that day. We didn't kill anybody at the Capitol. Any Capitol Police or any officials or anything like that, but they took our lives. And And I felt very strongly about that encroachment. I felt like it was like a declaration against the American people. Like, you're going to steal our election, then when we show up to peacefully protest, you're going to murder unarmed citizens on the Capitol. I said that's going too far. So, in the face of even possibly being arrested, I've been posting on my social media, videos that you guys can see. Actually, if you guys want to play some of the videos on pardonjakelang.com, there's two videos on there. One of them shows me saving Philip Anderson, and the other one shows me going like this to try to stop police violence. I'm pointing down at the ground where Roseanne is, and I'm trying to stop the police from being violent that day, in fact. And so, I put myself on the radar for the FBI immediately. They had somebody tracking me just a few days after January 6th. And then I was violently arrested, tackled to the ground 10 days after January 6th on January 16th, 2021. Like 12 FBI vans. I swear they were like swinging out of the trees at me. I was
Did they
limping
come to
back
your
from.
house? Where did this happen?
Yeah, so I was shot on January 6th actually with a rubber bullet, and my foot like exploded. It was broken. I was on crutches, and the FBI had met me outside of church, basically on a limp back that I was walking back from church, and tackled me to the ground. And that was my last moment as a free man until January 21st, 2025. Oh man, many
Wow.
years. And so I had been moved around from a couple different prisons in New York, including the infamous prison MCC Manhattan that's now closed, that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself in. And so I was in pretty much the same cell. They said I think I was in his cell, but it was a dungeon, and I've got moved to many other dungeons, including getting flown all the way out to Oklahoma on Con Air, which is an airplane full of convicts all chained together. And then I got flown to Virginia and then driven up to the DC Gulag, where I remained in solitary confinement for an entire year. No haircuts, no shaves, no family visitation, no direct sunlight for like 6 months at a time. We
What
didn't
did
get
you
to
do
go
to
outside.
deserve solitary confinement? I'm sorry to interrupt. What did you do to deserve
Well,
solitary confinement
I've
for
done
six months?
no, 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 no. 6 months would be a blessing. I've done over 900 days of solitary confinement, Carl, throughout my 4 years and a little longer that incarcerated, about 2.5 years of solitary, where
Wow.
I knew God very well. We had a great relationship. So I was, suffering as a man, but in the spirit, I was rejoicing because I had so much private time, so much alone time to seek the inner room of God's heart, and know Jesus really, really in the most intimate way. But this is an
Wow.
atrocity. These are things that should never happen in America. This is something that you would think that happened in some type of third world regime, some type of banana republic, where they take political dissidents and lock them up and torture them like they did the Jan Sixers. And I had many interviews, and I always like to make it very clear: we're not sitting here to gain pity or to complain and stuff.
Sure.
God does not give us the spirit of fear. It's power, love, and a sound mind that comes from His Spirit. But it's so important that the American people know what lengths the deep state, the shadow government, whatever you want to call it, these Marxists are willing to go to shut down your voice. And so for the first year, to answer your question, we were on COVID protocol. And so 23
Huh.
hours a day
Of course.
inside the cell, 23 hours a day inside the cell. You get 1 hour a day outside to take a shower and to call your family quick on a wall phone. And, that was it. And so it was me, the Holy Spirit, and the Bible, and a little
Wow.
handheld radio listening to K-Love and to some of the local pastors in DC. And so, I learned to become resilient and strong and have to deal with any situation that comes my way. Not becoming dejected, not becoming embittered, because in that situation, it's really psychological warfare,
Yeah.
and it's purposeful.
Yeah.
Because they want you to become like a government lapdog and just willing to roll over to a plea deal. They're trying to break your spirit, and so you have to understand that you're at war every minute in that cell, and that they're trying to create in you a weakness, a compromise your integrity, to bend the knee to them. And so I was very aware of that. That what was happening to me was not. anything that should be expected from a political prisoner. I mean, political prisoners like Nelson Mandela and many others in history have gone through similar circumstances. And, the resilience comes from God. The resilience comes from we have
Mm.
principle that we're standing for.
All
And
right.
so to break is to break the principle. And so we have a historic precedent to set. We never bent down to tyranny. We never compromised our integrity. And that was all the blessings and the glory of God.
All right. So, Jake, we have a few minutes left with you. I'm going to ask some very straightforward questions. I'm just going to ask you bullet point questions and just basically some bullet point answers if you can for the sake of time. That we have about 3 minutes remaining here in this block. So, okay. So you didn't get a trial. Did you ever see a judge at all
Ye-
while you were basically
Yeah,
in behind bars?
Yes, I saw a judge. I originally had four charges. When I refused to testify against Trump in the second impeachment hearing, they superseded me with eight charges. Then I refused to take a plea deal, and then they superseded me with 12 charges, all in like a bludgeoning tactic to try to get me to break. So yes, I had charges. I was indicted, but they never gave me a trial.
Okay, so 4.5 years. You 4.5 years. You never had a trial. Did they give you a public defender? Did you have a private attorney?
I had a private attorney, my friend Stephen Metcalf, and also Professor David Clemens were my attorneys, and we filed in the Supreme Court against that 1512 obstruction of Congress charge, and we beat them. And that process to go all the way to Supreme Court and to win took about 2 years, and it elongated my case just to fight against. That was the textbook weaponized charge that the DOJ used against 400 Jan 6ers and Donald Trump. They charged him with that too before his case was dismissed, trying to pervert the law code to try to bludgeon it, to attack people with the law. This is lawfare that they used against us. And the Supreme Court saw through the dirty tricks of these George Soros prosecutors, and we won against this one of the charges of the 12 I had, which was a serious 20-year felony charge.
Wow, this is unbelievable. Jake, if you can, I'm not, because we're almost out of time here. I want to ask you to stay with me 5 more minutes into the next block, if you could possibly do that. But we do have a minute left. Let me ask you, what were some of the tactics that the guards used behind bars in just 1 minute to play with your mind, psychological warfare, as you've called it? What did you experience?
So what they would do, and this is heinous, they would pick out one person and beat them senselessly. One of the Jan Sixers, my friend Ryan Sansel, was beaten until his head was swollen and his eyes were, it was unrecognizable. And that's, using that to strike fear into the hearts of everybody else so that, they and, that we would not step out of line, so that there would be this constant, threat of death lingering over us if we didn't, toe the line with them to their, ridiculous, solitary confinements, no religious services, no family visitation. So, when you're under the threat of death every day, you're less likely to protest the disgusting food and the horrible treatment and stuff like that, because you know that 20 guards can show up at your cell in the middle of the night and
Okay.
handcuff you and beat you until you're black and blue.
Okay. All right. We gotta leave it there for now. If you can stick with us for another few minutes, we would certainly appreciate it. We're speaking to Jake Lang, the longest serving J6 hostage. We'll be back. All right, welcome back to the program. Again, I'm joined with my guest, Jake Lang, the longest serving J6 hostage. Jake, just real quick before we get back to the topic at hand, you have a website where you are literally raising funds, a Give, Send, Go account. Do you want to just make mention of that real quick in what you're doing for other
Yeah,
J6ers, if you will?
of course. Well, being incarcerated for 4 years, most of my brothers, they were the breadwinners, and there are a lot of blue collar, like entrepreneur types, small businesses, plumbers, roofers, contractors, and stuff. And they left young wives and kids at home to fend for themselves. I mean, and most of these families became financially devastated, especially their entire life savings
Sure.
wiped out, paying for, a federal attorney is like $100,000 just for them to get out of the bed in the morning. So, these families have, some of them have nothing left. In fact, many of them moved out of their homes, in with other family members, mortgage sold off, bankruptcy, cars repossessed. I
Wow.
mean, we've had horror stories. It's really even hard to talk about because when you're in prison, you know, you can go through a lot of torture, right? A man can really get used to anything, but the real collateral damage was the family members at home, the young wives, the kids, you know, people that are innocent and you know, really suffering without the men at home. So we started the January 6th Life Rebuilding Project. And if you guys want to donate to help get the Jan Sixers back up on their feet, go to j6rebuild.com. That's the letter J, the number 6rebuild.com,
Yep.
j6rebuild.com. And you can help get like first month's rent for these guys. Some of them are going home to no home whatsoever.
Wow.
They don't have family like that. And so we have to really come around them as a community, get them, you know, new cell phones, pair of sneakers, some groceries, stuff like that, just basic necessities so that they don't end up in like some kind of homeless, penniless scenario. So we're fulfilling literally hundreds of needs right now. There's 250 Jan Sixers that were just liberated by our hero, President Trump, and we need to make sure they're all taken care of and not in any kind of, you know, horrible scenario where they have nothing and nowhere to go.
All right. And just real quick, 30 seconds or so, President Trump issues a full pardon. I think there were six, I can't remember, 6 or 14. I don't know why those numbers stick out in my head, where there were commutations that were being considered for pardons. But at least, I mean, he pardoned virtually everyone. So what do you want to say to President Trump? Because obviously there was pushback. I'm glad he did what he did. I think he did what needed to be done, given the fact that I think the punishment for you guys was the process. I think that's the way the left intended it to be.
President Trump, you've got the heart of a lion. God is using you in mighty ways, and we're proud of you for being bold enough to, in the face of all this woke ideology and all these rhinos that want to tiptoe around this injustice. You said this injustice is not supposed to be in America. You can't have political prisoners 2 miles away from the United States Capitol where you're serving right now our country in great ways. And so you did a move that is historic, and we and our families truly appreciate you, and you have you have our loyalty to say the least, and we're going to be supporting everything you do from here on out, President Trump. God bless you, sir.
Amen. Amen. Hey, okay, so now again, the process is the punishment. You don't go to trial for over 4 years. And guys, I mean, this is unheard of. This doesn't happen. The only way you would do something like this is if you were treating somebody like a terrorist, that you would keep it a Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, and Club Gitmo is about to reopen for some illegal immigrants. But that's how you would treat that's how you would treat terrorists, right? I mean, they charged you guys with seditious conspiracy, came up with this old law to use against you guys. Many people were initially going to be charged with misdemeanors. Misdemeanors or trespassing, so on, etc. Obviously, there were some guys that did things that they shouldn't have done at the Capitol that day, and I don't want to minimize that. But once you destroy the system that we're all supposed to live by, I'm sorry, you got to let people out. I mean, it's as simple as it's so simple to me that the punishment was the process. Talk to us more. You talk to us about your friend being beaten as a tactic, as a way to get you guys to submit. Was there anything else that you endured, that you experienced, whether it was in jail, whether stuff that you didn't go to the courtroom much. I was going to say what you saw in the courtroom, but good God, what else can you tell the audience? What do you want them to know about what you endured and what other J6ers endured?
Well, you know, we could talk endlessly. I mean, I've been pepper sprayed and left half naked in a cell for 2 weeks. I've been punched in the gut for singing the famous J6 national anthem. You know, we've endured it all. We've endured incredible adversity. But what I really like to do is testify to the man who lived inside me, who made me endure that, who
Amen.
allowed me
Amen.
to and blessed me throughout this whole entire thing. You know, guys. when we have our faith tested in this life, in this walk that we have, that's a blessing from God because He's truly putting on your shoulders. He's letting you shoulder a load that He wouldn't give to a lesser man or woman. And so when you go through the challenges of life, when you are put in the fire of trials, and as the book of Peter says, blessed are you when you are put in the fires of trials because your enduring faith will sculpt your character. And so, it's not about getting to the destination. It's about who you become when you're climbing the mountain. And, the mountaintop view is great. Being home and being sunburnt from deep sea fishing yesterday is great. But
I saw that on X. Good for you.
yeah, it's a blessing. But, it's really more about the man I became while I was inside the cell, who God had sculpted me to be, because I allowed that process to work out in my life. I leaned in on the Lord. I trusted not in my own understanding, and I allowed His light to guide and be the lamp unto my footpath. So, I just want to encourage the people out there that have gone through the struggle for the last 4 years, not just Jan 6ers, but we all lived underneath tyranny with Joe Biden. And so, together as Americans, we're healing as a country. We're entering into a new age, but we should not become dejected and embittered by our foes and by all the people that have tried to, destroy this beautiful way of life. But let's just continue to rise and be the shining city on the hill, the light that the world needs. And so, if I can come out of the prison cell after enduring what I have with a smile on my face and, still proclaiming God's glory, throughout all this, is something that we should all be doing, and be focused on being the solution rather than just whining about the immense problems, because that's not going to get us anywhere. And so, my message to the American people is be inspired, be courageous, and be like Trump, be like the Jan Sixers. We're a movement together, make America great again. It's not just about one man up at the top. We love him very much, but it's about each individual putting in their best foot forward and being excellent and being an overcomer and just trusting in God no matter what the circumstance, no matter how dark the night is. Know that the light of day is coming the next morning.
All right, I think we just I don't know if we're watching your calling right before our eyes or what here, Jake. I don't know if you're going to be an evangelist, a pastor, or what have you, but I know that you are a child of God, and it's so cool to hear that, man, because obviously you've endured a lot, and I can't imagine enduring what you did endure without having the hope of Jesus Christ in you. I don't even know how it's possible. Tell us real quick. We only have a couple of minutes. Were there more people, more J6ers that you know of? Did they find Christ? How did others survive? Did more of you find Christ? I suspect you were a Christian before you went in, if your faith was tested. But what did you witness as far as faith was concerned? And then tell us what it was like when you learned what you felt the moment you learned you were pardoned.
That moment was a great moment, but actually we were so blessed because we had some really mature Christians in there, and we were able to do Bible studies together. And just like 2 weeks ago, while I was in the prison cell, we had a revival in the DC Gulag, and I baptized by God's grace 4 men in
No
one day.
way.
And one of them was my Jan 6 brother, and another one was a young 18-year-old named Marquise, and we had Victor, and we had Rashid, and he was 22 and 25 years old. And so I've seen beautiful things inside. I mean, I've seen horrible things in the prison, people being stabbed, but I've seen that stuff is, it's horrible. It needs to be spoken because it's transparency, it's the truth. But I try to focus on when people think about January Sixers, 40 men together in a prayer group after singing the national anthem, praying and crying out to God on one accord together, saying, Lord, deliver us. And then the Lord answered our prayers. He parted the Red Sea. He opened up a wide path where there was a 0% chance of getting justice in the DC court system. We were all being, led to basically to the slaughterhouse.
We got
But
about 40
God,
seconds.
yeah, but God is the one who delivered us in spite of our enemies' best schemes and plans. He opened up. I mean, what a deliverance! It was like the pharaohs had bent down and he broke the chains off us, and we feasted on freedom right before our enemies' eyes. He's blessed us. So God bless America. Thank you, Carl, for having me on so much.
Hey,
And
10 seconds. 10 seconds. Your parents. What did they do? They stood by you,
my,
obviously. 10 seconds.
My dad was like a superhero, standing outside the prisons with a big sign on saying, "My son is a hostage of the Biden regime," and following me from prison to prison, making sure I was safe. And my mother
Wow.
was praying for me. And this is the people that make America great.
All right.
When back against the wall, we fight and we don't stop. So God
All
bless
right.
America.
All right. A great heavenly father and a great earthly father. Jake Lane, thank you so much for joining us.